Well, it's good to be here with you again today in the few minutes that we have together. Again, I want you just enjoy one of these formations of one of these lakes, salt lakes, or mineral lakes. These formations come up out of the volcanic activity. I believe that the material there is what you might call something like the bicarbonate of soda. Not that you'd want to grind it up and make soda water out of that. Most people may not know what that means. But anyway, Sherry just has a way of capturing those lovely moments, so thank you, Sherry, for that. Let's jump into our topic today. Now, this is a sort of a huge title. I don't know if I will even honor the title, but I'm going to graciously attempt to do that. What is real religion? Subtitle there is Getting the Basics. So I sort of set out a huge goal for me to do in just a few minutes. So follow along carefully. And I'll try to take these passages and allow them to be a blessing to you as we go. So this is a complicated sentence. I know Sherry worked with me quite a bit on this sentence. Bless her heart for that. Listen carefully. Experiential religion. That's the religion of your experience daily, requires an experimental religion. Now, it's really one and the same religion. But I kind of cut part of a passage out in Malachi 3, 10 and 11, just to show you the experimental language. Test me now in this, says the Lord of hosts. And he's talking about being faithful in your tithes and your offerings to God. And says, test me in this, says the Lord of hosts. That's experimental language. If you took physics or chemistry and you did an experiment, you tested those things to make sure they were true. So with this concept of real religion gets to challenge God in your daily experience. Does that make sense? And he says, test me and see if I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour out for you a blessing until it overflows. You come to know God by experience, and he says, test me. I think that's a beautiful picture of God. Okay? Experimental religion is testing and tried result. Oh, I didn't write that well. Experimental religion is tested and tried, resulting in experiential religion. You come to know God through this experience. But you must cooperate with God. And he accomplishes his work in you and through you. Okay. So the experience of growing into a graceful relationship is twofold. Number one, the work God must do to move us into his will. It is God looking for the lost lamb. It is God who comes to find you. That's his work. To find you and move you into his will. Number two, our work is to submit to his will, our yes to him, and our action of trusting him. Now, every time you say yes to God, you're saying yes to his will. Yes, Lord, I will accept Jesus as my Savior. Yes, Lord, I will accept your love to love my neighbor. So that word yes is the action of your faith. And I'm going to say this to you very clearly and very simply. Every yes to God is an act of obedience. Now, if you didn't hear that, you missed the entire point of this presentation. Every time you say yes to God, it is an act of willing obedience. Okay, let's jump into this. Number one, how does God move us into his will? Philippians 1:6. Paul writes, being very confident of this, he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Jesus Christ. Not only does he move you into his will, but then he does that daily growth, that daily experience. And we experience that every single day, the work of God in us, moving us closer into harmony with his will. Are we willing and cooperating? Romans 1:4-5, Jesus Christ our Lord, through whom we have received grace and apostleship. I'm sure that you'll read this and walk around and say, hey, I'm one of the apostles now. We have received grace and apostleship to bring about the obedience of faith among the Gentiles for his name's sake. So the obedience of faith is that, yes, I trust you enough to do your will, God. So obedience is the act of doing what God has asked you to do. Faith is the courage to say yes, no matter what the rest of the world thinks. So, as we grow in this graceful relationship, our work of submitting to his will, our yes to him, and our action of trusting him looks like this. John 14:23. Jesus replied, "If anyone loves me, he will obey my teachings. My Father will love him. We will come to him, and we will make our home with him." That's present tense language. Jesus wants to come and live with you and make our home, God says, his home with you. Isn't that amazing? Now, how did Jesus model this reality? In John 14:31, he says, "The world must learn that I love the Father and I do exactly what my Father has commanded me." See, Jesus had no problem cooperating with the Father. I need to ask you a question. Do you have any problem cooperating with God to do what Jesus has asked you to do? It's really profoundly simple. It isn't rocket science. Notice 1 John 2:3-6. "We know that we have come to know him if we obey his requests, his commands. The man who says, 'I know him,' but does not do what he commands is a liar, and the truth is not in him. Whoever claims to live in him, that is Christ, must walk as Christ did, as Jesus did." Isn't that lovely? Notice Luke 14:33. "In the very same way, any of you who does not give up everything cannot be my disciple." In other words, faith says, "Lord, here I am. Take all of me. Take everything I have. Here I am. I am submitting myself to you." That is what we do. That's our work. God can't make us do this. This is what we do freely and willingly. That is our part. Isn't that lovely? So, an illustration, the parable of the two sons. "So what do you think?" Jesus asked. Small crowd gathered around. He said, "A man had two sons. He came to the first and said, 'Son, go to work today in the vineyard.' And the son answered, 'I will not.' But afterwards he regretted what he said, and he went. The man came to the second and said the same thing. And he answered, 'I will, sir.' But that son never did go." So then Jesus poses this question: "Which of the two did the will of his father?" And they said, "The first." So who did the will? It is not the words, but it's the action of real religion. It is not what we say, "Oh, I believe," but it's what we do with that belief. What does it look like acted out in our life? What happens when it takes on the three-dimensional act of you moving towards the will of God and watching the will of God manifested in your life towards another human being? You come to know God as he works in you. God's work results in spiritual action. Now, spiritual action is God at work through us. It's not you making up something for God to do. It's God at work in you. Spiritual action is God at work through us. This means God's will. This means God will and does minister to this world through you and I. You see, every man, woman, and child is called to ministry in the Christian church. Philippians 2:12 and 13, Paul wrote, "For it is God who works in you to will and to act according to his good purpose." Verses 14 through 16, "Do everything then, therefore, without complaining or arguing," that's called grumbling, "so that you may become blameless and pure." In other words, that spirit of willing cooperation has something to do with your sanctification. Children of God without fault in a crooked and depraved generation, in which you shine like the stars in the universe as you hold out the very word of life. Understand that God manifesting himself in you, moving you towards the world with the compassion and the agape love of God, holding out the word of life, is what causes you to grow into the men and women God called you to be. Well, that's the end of our presentation. Very simple. I want you to go back through. We're not being exhaustive here. We're just giving you a basic introduction. Are you a willing participant? Are you surrendering as the Holy Spirit convicts you? I want to go to our closing picture that Sherry took. If you go up to Salmon, Idaho, and you look back to the south, there's pasture out there. That pasture grass is like, not quite up to my waist, but in places it is. And we're looking south, and that blue sky is so beautiful, and there's that one cloud right in the middle. And Sherry and I looked at that and said, doesn't that look like a seashell? Well, I'll let you decide that. I want to thank Sherry again for her fabulous pictures. If you ever get a chance to go up and spend some time in the valley up there, I just encourage you to do that. It's lovely, lovely country. Remember, don't be afraid to trust God and just give Him everything you have and everything you are. Blessings. See you again. Bye-bye.